I'm an old woman from Seattle, and this really happened to me last spring. I've learned not to share every bruise and blessing with the internet, but what I'm about to tell you is the truth of my life, spoken plainly because I earned it. At SeaTax Concourse B, my boarding pass turned to a red X, and the agent told me my ticket to Atlanta had been canceled by my daughter-in-law, Brittany, while my family stood 20 feet away, pretending not to see me. We were gathered for my granddaughter, Lila's 5th birthday weekend. The plan, a big surprise at her favorite place in the world, the Georgia Aquarium, and a Sunday brunch at the Westin Peachtree Plaza. I kept my hand on the handle of my little blue Samsonite, the one with a chip on the wheel from a curb on Ballard Avenue, and felt the heat of humiliation rise into my neck while Brittany's glossy mouth tilted into a smile. She had changed seats, moved people around, and erased me like a line of chalk. Then, just as I swallowed to speak, the intercom cracked, and the pilot's voice floated through the gate area. "We're about ready to board. One special welcome today for a first-class passenger joining us, Grandma." For a heartbeat, the world held still, and Brittany's eyes snapped to me as if the floor had tilted. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. Tell us where you're from and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. Let me back up, because revenge doesn't start with fireworks. It starts with a paper cut. My name is Evelyn. I'm 67 years old. I live in a modest condo near Golden Gardens, and I walk to the Shilshole Bay Marina most mornings to feel the wind off the Sound. I was a school secretary at Loyal Heights Elementary for 20 years, and before that, a legal assistant at a small firm on First Avenue when records were still kept in brown accordion files with elastic strings. I don't like to fight, or I didn't, until Brittany taught me. My son, Mark, is a software engineer, Amazon first, then a little Bellevue startup. Kind and brilliant and conflict avoidant. In that way, boys sometimes become when their father leaves, and their mother takes night classes to keep the lights on. He married Brittany 3 years ago in a rooftop ceremony at the Edgewater. All glass and white flowers and drone photography. She's the kind of beautiful that makes waiters refill her water twice, and the kind of determined that turns a minor inconvenience into a crusade. She runs a boutique PR firm, Kincaid Media Group, in a co-working space in South Lake Union. I'd watched her charm city council candidates and bartenders with the same empathy-tilted smile. She wore a diamond like an ice cube. She hugged me with both arms and her chin in the air. The first time she took a little piece of me was small. It was a birthday dinner for Mark at the Pink Door. I arrived, gift in hand, a battered first edition copy of Steinbeck he loved as a teenager. East of Eden, from a shop in Pioneer Square where the dust smells like the 1970s. The hostess looked at me with gentle pity. The reservation had been canceled. "Your daughter-in-law called," she said, checking the screen. "She said your plans changed. We tried your number." I stood there while couples drifted past into lamplight and live accordion. I called Mark. He didn't pick up. Later, Brittany texted, "So sorry for the mix-up, Grandma." We did a backyard thing instead. My fingertips buzzed. I told myself it was miscommunication. That's how people survive the small cuts. They call them accidents. Then there was the time I arrived to Lila's preschool show. Down by the bay, in cardboard fish hats, and the front desk told me my name wasn't on the pickup list anymore. "We can't let you into the building without pre-authorization," the receptionist explained, eyes sliding toward a laminated policy sheet taped to the plexiglass. "It says here, Evelyn is not to attend school events without prior consent." The consent had my son's electronic signature and Brittany's email address. Mark called me later, sheepish. Britt said it was just a safety thing. Too many people crowding. She must have clicked the wrong form. "Her clicks seem to go one way," I said. Silence hummed. There is a particular humiliation in walking back down a school hallway, smelling of glue and washable paint, with a gift bag still in your hand. I've done it twice, both times courtesy of Brittany Kincaid. I didn't know we were warming up for the airport. By March, Mark had told me their plan for Lila's 5th birthday, a long weekend in Atlanta where Brittany had clients and cousins, with a Saturday run through Ponce City Market and tiny cupcakes from 9 Mile Station. "Mom, you'll stay at the Georgian Terrace with us," he promised. "We'll all fly Delta, C2ATL, easy. Lila wants to sit with you so she can look out the window." Lila's voice squeaked in the background. "Nana, sharks!" I heard Brittany say something I couldn't catch, a low murmur like a current beneath the conversation. When Mark repeated the itinerary, it came with a small adjustment. "We'll meet you at the gate. Britt's doing the bookings." I should have insisted I book my own. But conflict, like exercise, is a muscle you have to train, or else you discover you can't lift anything when it matters. I let Brittany handle it. "She's good with logistics," Mark said, and I told my stomach to stop chewing the edge of my heart. The week before we flew, my confirmation came through. Delta Flight 1480, C to ATL, Concourse B, Seat 23F, boarding at 7:15 a.m. I printed the email because I am a woman who has been alive long enough to respect printers and paper. I tucked it into the front pocket of my blue Samsonite because if I can touch a thing, it is real. A day later, I checked the seat map like a child peeking at a wrapped present. My seat was gray. It said, "No longer available." The confirmation still said, "Booked." Mark sent a heart emoji to my message about meeting at the gate after security. Brittany sent a thumbs up. It was the first time I noticed she never used words when symbols would do. At 4:30 on Friday morning, Seattle was a wet dishcloth. I took the 44 to the link at UW, rode down to the airport with college kids sleeping against their backpacks, and queued at Delta because I like talking to people when something feels fragile. I handed my paper to the woman with kind eyes and a pixie cut. "Morning, Ms. Ortiz," she said. "Let me see." Her typing was piano music. Then her face changed by a millimeter. "So, this booking, I'm not seeing an active ticket for you. There must be a mistake." "She's saying you canceled last night around 10:05 p.m. The agent turned the monitor slightly. "Sometimes it's a time zone thing, like a 5-minute window where—" I was asleep with a book on my chest at 10:05. The agent's mouth softened. "We can try to reaccommodate you, but the flight is tight today. A lot of folks to Atlanta." Behind me, laughter bubbled. Brittany's voice, sugar-coated, telling someone about brand alignment. I didn't turn. I didn't want her to think I'd been looking for her approval. But I felt the edges of the humiliation come out sharp and clean. I had the sense she was watching my reflection in the podium's metal base like a trophy. I breathed. "Ma'am," I said to the agent, Could you print the record of changes to the reservation? For my notes. She looked at me for a beat. I can't print internal audit trails, but I can read you what I can see. The changes were made from a Kincaid Media Group account profile. Same last name as... She looked past me, then back, careful. There is a lot going on with this PNR. Does it say who paid? Your ticket was originally paid with a Visa ending in 4123. The cancellation is labeled voluntary, customer initiated, no penalty, and the miles were redeposited to a Sky Miles account that isn't yours. I tasted pennies. Is there a manager? I am the manager. I nodded, because I'm old enough to know that if you're being told yes, you don't ask for a bigger yes. Is there any way I can still get to Atlanta this morning? She tapped, scanned, frowned, tapped again. Gatehouse controls 2 seats in the front that aren't in inventory yet. We never promise them, but if you go through security now and talk to Chelsea at B17, she's in a better position to help. Tell her Nancy sent you. I rolled away on the Samsonite, knuckles white on the handle. In the glass of a Hudson News window, I caught my face. T.E. woman with soft lines and gray hair she refused to dye, wearing Lila's hand-drawn shark pin on her denim jacket. When I passed security, the agent's stamp thunked down with an authority I needed to borrow. At B-17, Mark was with Lila, kneeling to show her the airplanes. Lila bounced and squealed, "Nana, Nana, I brought gummy sharks." I opened my arms. She barreled into me, peanuts on her breath from the free samples. Brittany watched from a cafe table with 2 of her cousins, phones propped like trophies. "You made it," she said, as if we weren't on our way to the same gate. "I did," I said, "and Lila and I are going to sit together." "Oh," Brittany glanced at her phone. "They might not let you board. Something about the system. It's complicated." She said it like she was saying, "It's just gravity." I felt a quiet in myself, so still, I could hear my grandmother's voice from decades ago. "Keep your papers. Keep your head. People like that win because you make noise." The quiet moved me to the podium. "Chelsea?" I asked the gate agent. She looked up from a tangle of seat assignments. "Yes, ma'am?" "Nancy in ticketing sent me. I'm Evelyn. My ticket was canceled without my consent by someone connected to another passenger on this itinerary. Delta may have 2 gatehouse seats available. And if it helps, I have a printed confirmation and a pocket full of miles I've been saving since 1989. Chelsea did what good people do. She didn't gasp, she didn't gossip, she just got to work. "Let me see what I can do," she said, and her fingers began to tap. Behind me, Brittany's voice sharpened to a whisper at her cousins. Lila tugged my sleeve. "Nana, what if we sit by the wing?" "If we can, we will," I said, and I kept my chin level while my heart fought not to beat out of my chest. Then the intercom crackled open, and the pilot's voice, smooth, practiced, calm, came through the cheap speakers. "We're about ready to board. One special welcome today for a first-class passenger joining us. Grandma." I hadn't asked anyone to say that. My eyes went to Chelsea's. She met them, smiled just a hair, and slid a boarding card toward me, printed with a number I had never seen next to my name in 40-plus years of flying. 1A. The way Brittany's chair scraped the floor as she stood was the sound of a mask coming loose. "Grandma," she said, "who did you call?" I took the card, folded my printed confirmation beneath it, and felt revenge click into place like a seatbelt. "Who I needed to," I told her, as the first boarding call chimed and the line formed as if the universe had been practicing this moment all along. And that's when, for the first time, I saw real fear pass over Brittany's face. I didn't know then that I had already been recording for a week. I didn't know that a clerk at the King County Superior Court would soon stamp a case number on a packet of papers with my name on it. All I knew was that it was time to stop bleeding and start keeping score. It didn't begin with lawyers, though. It began with a text thread Brittany didn't know I'd saved. 3 weeks earlier, I watched a small lie gaslight my whole family in a group chat titled ATL Birthday. Mark sent the itinerary. Brittany added her cousins, both with names ending in Kincaid like accessories. I chimed in. I'll bring the banner. Lila loves the one with glitter sharks. Brittany replied with a teal heart. And, actually, glitter is banned at the hotel per housekeeping policy. It was a tiny thing. Except later that day, after I bought non-glitter banners at Bartell Drugs, I called the Georgian Terrace to confirm adjoining rooms. The woman at the front desk giggled. Ma'am, glitter is not banned. It's Georgia. Glitter is an appetizer. So I began to screen record. iPhones make it easy. A single swipe, the little circle fills, and suddenly people's selective memories become less flexible. Each time Brittany changed a detail and swore it had always been that way. Airport, pickup times, dining reservations, Lila's bedtime rules. My thumb caught the truth before it drifted away like breath on a window. Then, the night before the flights, I received an email at 9:57 p.m. Your Delta ticket has been changed. I hadn't touched anything. I checked my wallet on the counter as if physical proximity to a credit card prevented a digital assault. At 10:08 p.m., a second email. Your Delta ticket has been canceled. There was a number in the fine print, a PNR locator that might as well have been a blood type. I called Delta's after-hours line and met a tired man named Christopher, somewhere in Arizona. Ma'am, the cancellation on this record came from a logged-in profile that isn't yours, he said. I'm limited on what I can share, but if you suspect unauthorized access, file a report with us and with local law enforcement. We can flag the account for a PIN requirement. A PIN? When anyone tries to modify travel connected to your name, the agent will need a 4-digit code only you know. How fast can we put that in place? As soon as I hit enter, he paused. Do you want one code or two? If anyone else manages your travel, we can give them a separate authorization. No, I said, and it surprised me how steady I sounded. No one else manages my travel anymore. When we hung up, my living room was dim, and my hands were cold. I wrapped my palms around a mug of tea and opened a blank document. I typed a list, the things I knew, the times I had been erased, the dates a dinner was canceled, the schools, the names of customer service agents. Then, because I am a woman raised by a woman who believed in paper, I printed it. I slid it into a manila folder and wrote, in block letters across the tab, boundaries. The next morning, when Nancy in ticketing told me my ticket didn't exist anymore, I heard my grandmother's voice again. Keep your papers. My folder was in the front pocket of my Samsonite. My printed confirmation, my screen recordings saved to a labeled album, even a small brass fountain pen my late husband used to sign checks. I am sentimental like that. I like tools that make ink. After the pilot said what he said, the gate area turned into a theater where nobody had known a performance was scheduled. Brittany approached me. her cousins flanking her like an entourage auditioning for a reality show. "Evelyn," she cooed, voice too sweet to touch, "I think there's been a misunderstanding. We arranged your ticket through my corporate account to get you the best price, and sometimes Delta auto cancels." "No," I said, and I smiled because I didn't need to raise my voice. Delta doesn't auto-cancel grandmothers. Her jaw clicked, a small muscle ticking like a second hand. "Well, either way, we should board," Chelsea said crisply, as if she were the director and hadn't hired any of the drama. "First class, pre-boards, and families with small children." "I have a small child," Brittany said, slick as oil. Chelsea's eyes flicked to Lila, who was holding my hand. "So does Grandma." Brittany's cousins laughed, then smoothed it into coughs. Brittany smoothed hair that didn't need smoothing. "Mark," she called, as if he were a dog near a busy street. "Come here." Mark looked at me. He has my father's eyes, blue like someone melted bottle glass and poured it into his skull. I raised the boarding pass a fraction of an inch and shrugged. He came toward me, the way a person walks toward a bridge they're not sure can hold their weight. "Mom?" he started. "I know," I said, "because love is not blind. It is painfully lucid. We'll talk on the plane." "First class," Brittany repeated, the way a child repeats a new word they want to own, trying on a size that doesn't fit and insisting it does. "Yes," I said, "sometimes life seats you where you've earned." Chelsea made the announcement, and the line moved. I walked down the jetway with Lila skipping beside me. "Do they have cookies?" she whispered. "They do," I said, squeezing her hand, "and they're better up front." Brittany didn't follow us down the carpet. Not yet. She stayed at the podium. I didn't look back because revenge, I would soon learn, feeds on the attention you give it. Better to deny it eye contact until it is starving. Inside the plane, the flight attendant, young, freckles, a messy bun threaded through a navy scrunchie, looked at my boarding card and grinned. "Welcome, Ms. Ortiz. We were specifically told to make sure Grandma was treated like royalty." She winked at Lila. "We have a pair of wings with your name on them." I sat in 1A for the first time in my life and listened to the hush of a plane being ready, the hum before the hum. I breathed in that cold, metallic air. My hands stopped shaking. If this were just a story about a seat, it would be small. But it was a story about being erased and learning to write myself in ink. It turned out that when you pull one string, you find it stitched through your entire life. 3 days earlier, I had gone to the King County Courthouse at 3rd and James with my manila folder. I went through security, nodded to a bailiff I recognized from the years I worked down the street, and took the elevator to the clerk's office. "I need to file a petition under RCW 7.1025, I said, because I may have left the law firm to count field trip permission slips. But statutes are like hymns. You don't forget the good ones. "Unlawful harassment. I'd like a hearing date." The clerk, a woman with thick glasses and a Seahawks mug that said, "Gavel Girl," slid a stack of forms across the counter. "You can attach screenshots and a declaration. Keep it factual. Dates, times. We'll set you in ex parte tomorrow morning. It's quick." I filled the forms out at a metal table, while teenagers that looked like angry deer argued about parking tickets. I wrote the facts. Dates, messages were altered, reservations changed, access used without consent. And the change to my airline reservation initiated from an account Brittany controlled. I didn't write adjectives. I stapled quietly. I slid my papers back to the clerk, who stamped them like a metronome, striking time. "Hearing at 9:00 a.m., Department 1, she said. Nora, an old friend from my law firm days, met me outside the courtroom. She volunteers at a legal clinic now, gray hair clipped in a bob, eyes soft and watchful. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Even if you don't get an order today, you're telling the court what's happening. Abusers love the dark. Brittany is not my husband." "Abuse is not a marital status," Nora said. "It's a habit some people carry like a favorite bag." The commissioner skimmed my petition, glanced up. "Ms. Ortiz, you're seeking a temporary order barring the respondent from interfering with your travel, your contact with your grandchild, and your reservations. You allege repeated cancellations, removals from closed spaces, and impersonations." "Yes, Your Honor," I said, and my voice surprised me by not breaking. "Do you have any police reports?" "Not yet. I thought I was losing my memory," I said, and the honesty of that startled even me. "I am not. I have screen recordings, printouts, and a witness from Delta if necessary." The commissioner nodded. "I'm granting a temporary order limited to prohibiting interference with the petitioner's travel and access to gatherings. We'll set a full hearing in 2 weeks. You'll need to serve the respondent." Nora squeezed my elbow as we left. "It's not everything, but it's a line." I was on my way to the service window when my phone lit. Brittany. The voicemail was almost comical. "Evelyn, we really need to get on the same page. You keep making things complicated. Mark needs less stress, not more. Let's be a team." Her voice always used team when she meant obedience. I saved it. I added it to the folder. I labeled it bait. At home, I called Delta's privacy office to request the account activity log for my name and frequent flyer number under the California Consumer Privacy Act, which, yes, I know is California, not Washington. But big companies often process one privacy portal for all, and I have learned that asking is often the whole trick. The agent replied, "We can't share other users' account info." And I said, "I'm not asking for theirs. I'm asking for mine." 30 minutes later, I had a file of timestamps that might as well have been fingerprints pressed into wet cement. At the top, 10:05 p.m., modification request. IP address, Bellevue. Device, Mac OS. Logged in via corporate SSO, Kincaid Media Group. I stared at that line. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt what I feel when I watch the tide pull back from Shill's Hole. Quiet, inevitable, colder than you expect. There is a mercy in data. It doesn't care how charming you are. Nora helped me draft a letter. Cease and desist from any further interference with my travel reservations, group event access, or communication with my family, including but not limited to impersonation, misrepresentation, and unauthorized modification of bookings. We sent it certified mail to Brittany's office, her condo's HOA, and, because I am my grandmother's granddaughter, an email to myself with the letter attached, so the date could not be argued with later. Which is how, when I stood at Gate B-17 and heard the pilot welcome Grandma, I was not a woman surprised by good fortune. I was a woman whose preparation had finally found oxygen. I won't pretend, though, that I didn't savor the look on Brittany's face. By the time we reached cruising altitude somewhere over Idaho, Brittany had somehow found a way to smear charm over reality and slide into Comfort Plus, 2 rows behind first. Mark stood in the aisle, one hand on the headrest, avoiding my eyes. "Mom," he said quietly, the way people speak in church. "What's going on?" I opened the manila folder on my lap. careful not to disturb Lila's coloring book. "Mark," I said, tapping the topmost page. "This is the audit log from Delta. It shows your wife canceled my ticket from her office last night. This," I flipped a page, "is the voicemail she left me after I filed for a temporary anti-harassment order. This is a copy of the order." Mark's throat moved. "Britt said—" "I know what she said," I replied, more gently than I felt. "I also know what she did." He closed his eyes for a second, then opened them. "I'm sorry." "That's not for me," I said. "It's for your daughter." He blinked. "What?" "I am not the only target when a person needs control like air," I said. "They'll take it from wherever is softest." He looked at Lila. She looked back with a crayon poised like a flag. I didn't push. Love is a slow animal. It has to be coaxed from its den, and it hates loud noises. But I let Mark see the papers. I let him hold them. He did not hand them back. When we landed in Atlanta, Brittany had done what Brittany always does, built a scaffold of story around herself so others could climb it. At baggage claim, she told her cousins, "Delta messed up. I fixed it. They're rude in Seattle." She said it loud so strangers would know she was a victim, and that her enemy was a corporation. She didn't know that some enemies are women with manila folders who have run out of patience. We checked in at the Georgian terrace under a chandelier that gathered light like gossip. Brittany forgot to put me on the reservation for the adjoining room. I stood quietly while the desk clerk called housekeeping and slid me a key with a smile that said she had seen worse families. Lila climbed onto the bed and bounced as if the springs were certainties. That night we ate at South City Kitchen Midtown, and Lila fell asleep in my lap, her breath damp against my sleeve. Mark paid. Brittany held her wine glass like it proved something. When we walked back to the hotel, the air was warm and smelled like magnolia and fried food. I tucked Lila into the small bed beneath the window and curled on the pull-out couch, the city humming like a tired hymn. The next morning, Georgia Aquarium Day, Brittany insisted the cousins ride together and that Lila ride with them. "We'll meet you there," she told me. "Parking is insane." I nodded. I had already bought our tickets online with times attached. I sent Mark the QR codes. He sent a heart. At the entrance beneath the giant whale shark statue, I scanned in and waited. Crowds pressed like a tide. 10 minutes, 20, 30. I called. Brittany declined. I texted. No bubbles appeared. I started walking. The jellyfish tank always makes me feel like somebody turned the world's volume down. I stood a minute in the blue and let my pulse drop. When I checked my phone again, there was a text from Mark. "Running late. Be there in 10. 10 stretched into 20. A mother near me tried to corral twins. A father told his son the story of why whale sharks have white dots. He said, 'It's like someone painted stars on you, so they'd never lose you in the dark.'" When Brittany finally arrived, she wasn't sheepish. She was triumphant. "We met with a client at Ponce," she said, as if I had asked. Lila ran to me and buried her face in my side. "Nana," she whispered, "they said you were lost." "Funny," I said, smoothing her hair. I knew exactly where I was. I won't list every small sabotage of that weekend, because it would be like reading someone else's dental records, intimate and unpleasant. But I recorded what mattered. And when we returned to Seattle on Monday, after the pilot announced, "Welcome, first-class passenger," Grandma again on the ATLC leg at the flight attendant's insistence, her grin almost rebellious. I had enough to finish the work I started. On Wednesday morning, in the shadow of the Columbia Center, we had our full hearing. Brittany wore cream and pearls. She came with a lawyer as shiny as her hair. Mark sat between us like a flag stuck in unfriendly soil. Nora whispered to me that this wasn't a war to be won by speeches. It would be won by receipts. The commissioner listened to Brittany's counsel first. How there had been a misunderstanding, a technical glitch, differing expectations between generations. My client is committed to family unity, the lawyer said, and the word unity rolled like a marble across the floor. Then it was my turn. I did not dramatize. I put my manila folder on the table like an altar offering and slid documents forward one by one. The Delta audit log, the timing of the cancellation, lining up exactly with the security camera timestamps from the co-working spaces lobby, pulled under public records because the building management had to issue incident logs for a separate police call that same night. I had not expected that, but the universe sometimes gives you a cup of water when you didn't even know you'd be thirsty. I played the voicemail. "Let's be a team," Brittany's voice said, silk sliding over a knife. I showed the school email removing me from the pickup list and the reply from the director confirming Brittany had made the request. Not Mark. I showed the reservation edit history from the Pink Door and the Georgian Terrace. I did not raise my voice. Truth is loud enough when it's printed. Brittany's lawyer tried one more angle. "With respect," she said, "Ms. Ortiz is an older adult who may have memory lapses." "I'm 67, I said, before Nora could squeeze my hand hard enough to still me. I forget where I put my keys sometimes. I do not forget whether I bought a plane ticket. The commissioner leaned forward, fingers steepled. "The temporary order is converted to a full order for 1 year, she said. "Ms. Kincaid, you will not alter, cancel, or interfere with the petitioner's travel, reservations, or access to family events. You will not impersonate or misrepresent yourself to any business to do so. Violation is contempt. Additionally, I strongly recommend the parties consider family counseling." She looked at me. "Ms. Ortiz, if you feel unsafe, you may return for an extension." Unsafe. It was such a big word for what had felt like death by safety scissors. But I nodded, because we women of a certain age know how to take the tools we're given and make something sturdy. After the hearing, Brittany's mask cracked in 3 clean places. "I hope you're happy," she hissed when Mark stepped away to take Lila to the restroom. "I'm not happy," I said. "I'm not unhappy. I'm done." "There will be consequences," she spat, quiet enough not to echo. "There already were," I said, and the calm in my own voice surprised me again. "You taught me how to keep receipts." We walked out under a Seattle sky that couldn't decide between rain and mercy. Mark handed me a paper cup of burnt courthouse coffee and cried without making a sound. Lila wrapped herself around my leg like a vine. We walked to the bus together, like a family that had remembered how to walk. Revenge is a simple word for what comes next, but it will do. It's not as bloody as people imagine. Sometimes it's a calendar invite with the right people and the wrong person locked out because they no longer hold the keys. Sometimes it's a pilot's voice over cheap speakers, making a corridor of strangers clap as an old woman steps into a seat she purchased with 30 years of saving. Sometimes it's a son who finally reads the paperwork instead of the caption. 2 weeks after the order, we had Lila's makeup birthday brunch at Canlis because I wanted to give my granddaughter a view of her city that was all water and green. I made the reservation myself. When the host answered, I said, "I'd like to place a passphrase on the reservation." He laughed softly and offered, "How about orchid?" That morning, when we arrived, Brittany stood at the host stand, hair shining, voice lacquered. She gave Mark's name. She smiled the smile that had opened so many doors. The host looked down his list and said, "What's the passphrase?" Her face stopped. She looked around as if the answer might be printed on a wall. "We'll wait," she said finally, stepping aside as a family of 4 flowed around them like a stream around a rock. I whispered orchid to the host, and he winked the way service industry people do when justice is happening in small doses. He led us to a window table. Brittany followed anyway and found a chair that wasn't there for her. Mark stood, mouth a sad line, and said, "Britt, not today." She stood in a foyer lit by flowers that weren't for her, and swallowed a hard thing that wasn't champagne. When our halibut arrived, Lila leaned toward me and whispered, "Nana, why are we whispering?" "Because," I said, cutting her fish into bite-sized promises. "Whispering is what you do when you're in a church, a library, or a moment you don't want to scare away." Brittany didn't disappear immediately. People like her don't. They fade like bruises, shifting colors before they go. She violated the order once, called the aquarium to argue. I shouldn't be on the family membership because it confuses the staff. I filed a contempt motion, and the judge made her pay my filing fee. She tried to shape the narrative online, long essays about toxic elders with no names in them, and her clients began to wonder why their publicist couldn't make her own life look good. Eventually, Kincaid Media Group shrank to a laptop and a ring light. There are worse fates than clicking "Go Live" to an audience that knows you're lying. Mark began therapy. I did too, because victory without reflection just becomes another kind of forgetting. We learned new words: enmeshment, triangulation, Darvo. The counselor, a woman with the warm hands of a bread maker, told us that healthy boundaries make people who need control feel like they're drowning. "They will call your boundaries cruelty," she said. "They will call your receipts betrayal. But your job is not to be understood. It is to be safe." Brittany didn't like being unsafe. She left for a while to stay with cousins in Atlanta who were kinder than she knew what to do with. When she came back, it was not to us. On the 1-year anniversary of the day the pilot said my name over a cheap speaker, Mark and I took Lila to the Museum of Flight in Tukwila. She wore a sparkly jacket and 2 plastic wings pinned crosswise on her chest. There's a Boeing 747 there you can walk through, and she ran her hand along the fuselage like a horse. "Nana," she asked, "what's first class?" "It's just a seat, baby," I told her, kneeling so our eyes were level. "That lets you rest your feet and drink your water out of a glass. It isn't important." "Then why was everybody looking at you that day?" "Because," I said, and I touched her hair. "Sometimes the world notices when someone stops letting themselves be made small." We ate hot dogs from a stand that tasted like the high school football games of my youth. We watched a small plane take off from Boeing Field and climb into the sort of blue Seattle gives you rarely and with ceremony. When the wind picked up, I took Lila's small hand, warm as fresh bread, and felt that sunlight reach into a part of me I had kept dark out of habit. The night I canceled my old email address and the passcodes Brittany used to puppeteer me, I thought about calling her to say I forgave her. But forgiveness is not a key you hand your burglar so they can come back when they get lonely. It's the lock you change so your house, your life, stops sounding like footsteps you can't identify. I still ride the 44 to the link at UW when I need the quiet of tunnels and the democracy of a train. Sometimes I end at SeaTac for no reason, just to watch the choreography of arrivals. When I pass Concourse B, I look at Gate 17 and remember the taste of pennies when Nancy said my ticket was gone. I remember Chelsea's wink when she slid me 1A. I remember a pilot's voice, amused and kind, saying my name in a way I had not heard a man say it since the day my husband whispered goodbye in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and mercy. The truth is that I did call someone that day, a few people. I called Delta and the court, and Nora, yes, but before any of them, I called myself. I picked up the phone after years of letting it ring, and I said, "Don't hang up. I'm here. I believe you. Keep your papers. Keep your head. We're going to the airport now." So when Brittany says to anyone who will still listen that I destroyed her, I let it drift. I don't correct her because I don't live in her story anymore. I live in mine, where I keep my own boarding pass in my own pocket. And the people I love learn to read the difference between an apology and a strategy. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I replay the sound of a pilot's voice through a bad speaker, and I feel the seat under me, and I look out over a carpet of clouds like fresh linen, and I think about the way a single calm announcement can undo hours of performance art. I think about the way crowds at gates never clap for cruelty, but will sometimes clap for a grandmother who, for the first time in a long time, is exactly where she's supposed to be. And in the hush, after the applause, in that clearing where the world feels arranged, I hear the only line that ever mattered. The sweetest revenge is a quiet boarding, and the sound of your own name spoken with respect. The end.